In April 2024, 23-year-old Noelle Marie Lynch, a young woman from Englewood, California, was reported missing under unusual circumstances. Noelle had graduated from St. Francis High School in Sacramento and later attended both the University of California and San Diego State University. However, her experience at these universities was not a pleasant one. Being far from her family left her feeling isolated, and the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic made things even harder, as lockdowns limited her ability to socialize with other students. Ultimately, she decided to move closer to home and enrolled at California State University in Sacramento. This allowed her to live with her parents, which made her life easier. Despite the positive change, things took an unexpected turn. Noelle's parents later told investigators that she wasn't in the best state of mind when she left their home on April 1st. Although they didn't disclose exactly what was troubling her, it was clear that something had upset her. She got into her car and drove off, telling her parents she was heading to Southern California. While her reasons for the trip remain unclear, her parents felt uneasy, worried that her mental state made her vulnerable. In the early hours of the following morning, around 3:30 a.m., Noelle contacted her parents to inform them that she had been in a car accident. Naturally, her parents panicked, but Noelle reassured them that she was unharmed. However, her car was severely damaged and no longer drivable. With no way to continue her journey, her mother made arrangements for her to stay at a hotel near Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, booking a room for her. Noelle's parents immediately went to meet her at the hotel, but when they arrived, she was nowhere to be found. Worried and confused, they continued to search, and the situation quickly became even stranger. The next day, around noon, Noelle's parents received a phone call from an unknown number. When they answered the phone, they were relieved to hear Noelle's voice, but their relief quickly turned to concern. Noelle spoke incoherently, not indicating where she was. Before they could gather more information, she ended the call. Later that same day, security cameras captured footage of Noelle walking away from an apartment complex on East Rondo Avenue in Englewood, approximately 6 miles from the hotel where she was supposed to stay. It was unclear how she got there or why she was at the complex. When investigators searched an apartment in the area, they found some of Noelle's belongings, including her backpack. Further investigation revealed that Noelle had been at the airport, as her cell phone was found at a Southwest Airlines ticket counter. This led to speculation that she might have boarded a plane, deepening concerns about her safety. Her parents feared she might need medical attention, especially given her erratic behavior and failure to disclose her whereabouts. Authorities released a public notice about her disappearance, describing Noelle as having brown hair, blue or green eyes, standing 5 feet 8 inches tall, and weighing 125 pounds. They also mentioned a distinctive birthmark on the inside of her arm, hoping someone might recognize her. Despite the public appeal, no substantial leads came in, and no one had reported seeing or hearing from Noelle. Her parents, growing more anxious with each passing day, feared something terrible had happened and that they might never see her again. Fortunately, this story has a happy ending. On April 3rd, just 2 days after she disappeared, Noelle's mother posted an update on Facebook, announcing that Noelle had contacted them and was no longer missing. The family thanked everyone who had shared information about her disappearance, but did not provide any details about how Noelle got in touch or where she had been during those 2 days. Investigators also kept the information private, simply confirming that Noelle was safe and no longer considered a missing person. While the specifics of Noelle's ordeal remain unclear, her family was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief, knowing she was out of danger. It is unknown whether Noelle returned to her parents' home or continued with her studies, but what matters most is that she was safe and that her family could finally find peace after the unsettling experience. In August 2023, Lisa and Omoto Sana, the parents of 33-year-old Asia Saldana, turned to the public for help when their only child went missing from Torrington, Wyoming. Asia had a history of struggling with addiction to illegal substances, which had previously led to jail time. However, at the time of her disappearance, she was not facing any legal trouble. On August 26, Asia was at her parents' house and decided she wanted to play a slot machine. She told them she was heading to a truck stop called the Western Travel Terminal and left around 4:30 p.m. While she was at the truck stop, Asia talked to her mother, Lisa, and said she would be home by 8 p.m. However, when 8 p.m. passed and Asia still hadn't returned, her parents grew increasingly concerned. They tried to contact her on her prepaid cell phone but were unsuccessful. Worried, they began asking around if anyone had seen her. One of their neighbors told them that he had given Asia a ride the day after she went missing. He said she asked to be dropped off at a hotel in the Denver area. The neighbor also mentioned that he returned to the hotel about an hour later, but when he got there, she was no longer there. Lisa and Omoto continued to try calling Asia, but by then, her phone had been disconnected. Then, on August 30th, they received a text message from Asia's number, claiming that she was fine and not in any danger. Despite the message, her parents weren't sure if it was her sending it. They reported her missing to the authorities, who took all the details into account and suggested that Asia had likely left Torrington. Investigators believed she might be in Colorado, as Denver was the last place she was known to be. However, this was not the first time Asia had gone missing for an extended period. In the past, she had disappeared but was eventually found in various locations, including Denver, Brighton, Nebraska, and Scottsbluff. The key difference this time was that, in previous instances, she always checked in with her family, but this time, she had not contacted them. As the investigation progressed, police mentioned that they had come across what they described as useful information, but they did not provide any further details. 3 months passed with no significant developments, and her family was left in a state of uncertainty. Finally, in November, Asia called her mother, Lisa, and assured her that she was safe. However, she provided no information about where she had been or what had happened during her time missing. She expressed a desire to return home, which offered a hopeful resolution to the ordeal. As a result, the case was officially closed. Sadly, this was not the end of Asia's troubles. Before she could return home, she was arrested and charged with several offenses, including felony possession and distribution of illegal substances. She was also charged with careless driving, failing to report an accident, driving without insurance, and other charges stemming from earlier offenses related to substance abuse. Though her family had hoped for her safe return, Asia's legal troubles continued, prolonging her and her family's challenges. In 2019, the quiet Dutch town of Drenthe became the center of a bizarre and unsettling case involving the Ruinerwold family. The family, consisting of Gerrit Jan van Dorsten and his 5 children, had reportedly been missing for nearly 10 years. The mystery began to unfold in October 2019, when a disheveled 25-year-old man walked into a bar in the village of Ruinerwold, in the Netherlands. He sat at the bar, ordered 5 beers, and drank them one after the other, without saying a word. After finishing his drinks, he left in silence. However, 10 days later, the same man returned, looking even more distressed. His hair was tangled, and his clothes were dirty and unkempt. Noticing his disoriented state, the bar owner, Chris Wester, asked if he needed help. The man confided that he had run away from a troubling situation and desperately needed assistance. He revealed that he had never attended school and had spent his entire life in isolation, a confession that deeply concerned Wester, who immediately contacted the police. When officers interviewed the young man, he shared an alarming story. He and his siblings had been living in a hidden cellar on a secluded farm, and his brothers and sisters, all of whom were now adults, were in desperate need of rescue. Acting on this information, the police were led to the farm. Upon arrival, they encountered a 58-year-old man who worked on the property but was not part of the family. He was arrested after refusing to cooperate with the authorities. It was soon revealed that the man who lived on the farm was Gerrit Jan van Dorsten. Neighbors had occasionally seen him on the property but assumed he lived alone. Once, they had spotted children but believed they were just visitors. Van Dorsten had moved to the property 9 years earlier, but little was known about him other than that he spoke German and appeared highly intelligent. He was often seen using binoculars to watch over the land and never allowed strangers near the house. During the police search, officers made a shocking discovery: a secret staircase, hidden behind a cupboard, led to the cellar where the family had been confined. All 5 adult siblings were found and rescued. Investigations revealed that none of the family members, including Van Dorsten, were registered with Dutch authorities, which raised questions about how they had been living in such secrecy. It was believed that Van Dorsten had kept his family isolated on the farm for nearly a decade due to his belief that the world was approaching an end. However, it remains unclear why he kept them hidden for so long. There were also unverified claims that Van Dorsten's wife, the children's mother, had either died before they moved to the farm or passed away while living there and was secretly buried on the property. None of these claims have been confirmed. The police reported that the family had been living off the grid, growing their food, and remaining completely detached from the outside world. The owners of the house were unaware of what was happening on their property, only noting that rent was always paid on time. Van Dorsten, who had suffered a stroke several years earlier, was taken into custody and questioned, but due to his poor health, he was never formally charged with a crime. Dutch authorities helped the rest of the family reintegrate into society, but their current whereabouts remain unknown. The case left many unanswered questions about how the family had lived in isolation for so long, and why they had been cut off from the world for nearly a decade. Margaret Mackenro was born on August 25, 1977, to Terry Deal in Livingston, Illinois. Her mother abandoned her, and she was adopted by Ian and Patrick Harkin. Margaret grew up as the eldest of 4 adopted children in New Jersey. Later in life, she enlisted in the Army and completed her basic training at Fort Jackson in 2001. For the next 2 years, she was stationed as a mechanic at Fort Riley, Kansas. During this time, Margaret reconnected with her birth mother, and the two formed a close relationship. In 1999, she was awarded a Valor Award for her efforts as a volunteer firefighter during Hurricane Floyd, when she helped with rescue operations in Bound Brook, New Jersey. In 2004, after being discharged from the Army, Margaret married her longtime friend, Timothy McEnroe. The couple had 2 children together, and Margaret also had a daughter from a previous relationship. She was living an eventful life, being recognized as a hero, and building a family of her own. Unfortunately, Margaret's life would take a tragic turn. On October 9, 2006, she and Timothy were involved in a heated argument, which led to a domestic disturbance report. However, by the time the police arrived, Margaret had already left for her parents' home. Later that evening, she returned to her residence in the Witchwood Way and Round Top Road areas of Warren Township, New Jersey. The next morning, Margaret spoke to her best friend on the phone between 8:30 and 9 a.m. That afternoon, at around 1 p.m., Timothy left the house to buy baby formula. When he returned around 3 p.m., Margaret was gone. Their baby was still in her crib, alone. Margaret did not return that day, and she hasn't been seen or heard from since. 2 days later, Timothy reported Margaret missing to the Warren Township Police Department. The investigation revealed that she had left behind her SUV and a broken cell phone, damaged during their argument the previous night. Additionally, Timothy mentioned that a bag containing $11,000 in cash had also disappeared. The police searched the home but found no signs of forced entry or a struggle. Margaret's credit card needed to be included, but the account had no activity. The case soon went cold as no solid leads emerged. However, 6 weeks later, on Thanksgiving Day, a Warren police officer found an Army T-shirt on Dockwatch Hollow Road, just 1 mile from Margaret's home. The shirt was sent for analysis, but no significant evidence was obtained. The shirt hadn't been weathered, suggesting it hadn't been exposed to the elements for long. It was also noted that Margaret would sometimes leave the house during arguments to cool down, but would always return, except this time she didn't. Despite the lack of evidence pointing to foul play, Margaret's family and friends strongly believed that she wouldn't leave without telling someone, especially not her children. Margaret Mackenro was 29 years old when she disappeared. She was last seen wearing a black BDU jacket, a grey US Navy sweatshirt, white checkered pajama pants, socks, and white Nike tennis shoes. She is described as a Caucasian female with brown hair and brown eyes, standing 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighing around 110 pounds. Anyone with information regarding Margaret's disappearance is urged to contact the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office at 908-231-71. Andrew Gray Chapman, often referred to as Andy, was 32 years old and living on Whitethorn Avenue in the Hilltop neighborhood, west of Columbus, Ohio. He shared his home with 2 roommates. In November 2006, they learned that their house was going to be foreclosed on by the bank. For reasons unknown, Andy chose to keep this information to himself, not informing his family. Andy's life had taken a downward turn just a year before when his wife filed for divorce and took their young son with her. A year before that, Andy had been involved in a car accident, which led to a substance addiction. However, after time spent in rehabilitation centers, he was able to overcome his struggles and establish himself in Ohio. Despite the challenges he faced, Andy remained in constant contact with his mother, Judy, and his grandmother. This connection, however, was abruptly severed with his disappearance. On December 6, 2006, Andy called his mother, seemingly in a state of panic. He told her he needed to see her immediately, but unfortunately, Judy was sick and couldn't make it to his house right away. 2 days later, when she finally arrived at his home, she found it empty. On December 8, 2006, Andy was last seen by neighbors at the house, who reported that the occupants were in the process of moving out. His car was still parked at the residence, but Andy himself was nowhere to be found. Despite these troubling signs, Andy wasn't reported missing until a month later, in January 2007, when he missed a court date. This raised alarms for his family, but tragically, the case was closed by authorities the following year without notifying the family. They assumed that Andy was simply running from legal issues. This mishandling of the case may have been a pivotal error in the search for Andy. The investigation was reopened in 2013 when it became clear that his family had not heard from him at all since his disappearance. Andy's sister, Amy, described him as a kind-hearted family man, while his mother, Judy, remembered him as a shy child who loved all kinds of sports, especially baseball. During the investigation, it was revealed that just a few months before his disappearance, Andy had requested a withdrawal from his retirement fund. His family confirmed that he received a check for $39,000. Of this amount, $14,000 was used to buy a car, the same vehicle that was left behind at the house. Strangely, the car had been transferred into the name of one of Andy's roommates without the family's knowledge. Both Amy and Judy strongly believed that Andy's disappearance was connected to the car and the money. Suspicion deepened when investigators were unable to trace the remaining funds that Andy had withdrawn. The circumstances surrounding his disappearance remain unclear, and after all these years, Andy's whereabouts are still unknown. As time passed, the possibility of foul play became more apparent. A reward of $4,800 is being offered for any information leading to Andy's location or answers about what happened to him. Andrew Chapman is described as a Caucasian male, with brown hair and brown eyes, standing at 6 feet tall and weighing around 175 pounds at the time he disappeared. He wore eyeglasses and had a mustache. It is uncertain what he was wearing when he vanished, but he typically wore large or extra-large shirts and size 11 to 12 shoes. If anyone has information regarding Andy's disappearance, they are urged to contact the Columbus Police Department at 614-645-4545. Lisa Lee Chandler was born in March of 1963. She would later become the mother of 2 boys and moved into a house located on the 5500 block of Highway 34, north in Wolf City, Texas. She had been living there for around 20 years. Unexpectedly, Lisa would disappear. It was around 5 p.m. on the 23rd of September, 2007, when the 44-year-old was last seen at her Wolf City home. That day, she had spoken with her mother, Marie, on the phone, telling her that she wasn't feeling well. Lisa mentioned that she had a doctor's appointment the next morning before heading out to her mother's home in Starks, Louisiana, about 6 hours away. However, Lisa never made it to her mother's house, nor did she attend her doctor's appointment. At that time, Lisa was known to be under more stress than usual. She had been going through a divorce. But it was very unlike for her to leave without warning. The next day, Marie tried to contact her daughter but couldn't reach her. Growing more worried, Marie drove to Lisa's house, where she found her daughter's vehicle still parked in the driveway and her beloved dog running around the yard. Marie approached the house and found the doors unlocked, the windows open, and the TV on. Lisa's pack of cigarettes, glasses, and purse were left on the table. Alarmed, Marie called the Hunt County Sheriff's Office that afternoon to report her daughter missing. When the police arrived, they brought sniffer dogs to help in the search. The dogs tracked Lisa's scent south of her Wolf City home, following the highway toward Greenville. After about 5 miles, the scent trail abruptly stopped. Handlers thought that Lisa might have been picked up by a motorist, as the trail stopped at a certain point. Ground and air search efforts were conducted across the 1,500 acres surrounding Lisa's home, but no clues were found. One person of interest was identified, but it hasn't been confirmed if any evidence has been tied to this person. Marie explained that she and Lisa had been speaking on the phone throughout the day, with their final call ending at 3 p.m. After no new leads surfaced, Marie reached out to some of Lisa's friends, but none of them had seen her either. In the days following Lisa's disappearance, the Hunt County Sheriff's Office conducted helicopter searches using infrared heat detecting technology, but those efforts were also unsuccessful. Sergeant Haynes suggested that Lisa did not leave on her own accord and emphasized that they needed help from the community to locate her. Lisa's oldest son, Chris, who was in college at the time, explained that the ordeal had been an emotional roller coaster for both him and his brother. Lisa Chandler's case has been classified as endangered missing, and it remains unsolved. Lisa is described as a Caucasian woman with brown hair and hazel eyes. She stands at 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighs around 110 pounds. She has a noticeable scar on her upper lip as well as on her shin, and a chickenpox scar beside her left eye. It's unclear what she was wearing when she disappeared, or what she may have taken with her. Anyone with information regarding Lisa's disappearance is urged to contact the Hunt County Sheriff's Office at 903-453-6868. Robert Harrod, also referred to as Bob, was born in January of 1928. He would go on to marry Georgia, with whom he had 3 daughters. In 2002, the family moved from Monrovia to Placentia, California. Following his wife's passing in 2008, due to a prolonged illness, Robert reconnected with a woman he had once been engaged to before the Korean War. Her name was Fontel Hea, and they had separated when he joined the military. In June of 2009, the reconnected couple got married at the Fullerton County Courthouse. The newlyweds were planning on moving to Robert's Placentia home in Orange County. At this time, he owned several properties and other assets, which were estimated to be worth around $5 million. But something unexpected occurred that ruined the couple's plans and ultimately left behind 3 daughters, a grandson, and 3 great-grandchildren. Robert's disappearance. On the 27th of July, 2009, Robert was at his residence at 522 Carnation Drive, where he and his son-in-law were doing some repairs in preparation for the arrival of his new wife. Around 2:30 that afternoon, Robert's son-in-law headed to Home Depot to get more supplies. When he returned to the property, an hour later, he found Robert's maid standing on the porch, waiting. The front door was locked, so the son-in-law and the maid entered through the back. Upon entering, they were met with an eerie silence. Robert was gone. That evening, after Robert still hadn't returned, the family contacted the police and reported him missing. At the time, Fontel was back home in Missouri, packing her belongings in preparation to move to Placentia 2 days later. Investigators searched the house and discovered that Robert's keys and wallet were missing. However, his 1997 gold Toyota Camry, along with his reading glasses, were left behind. There has been no activity on his bank accounts or credit cards since his disappearance. Detectives found a few notes suggesting Robert was planning to add his new wife's name to several accounts. After his disappearance, a dispute arose between Fontel and Robert's daughters over his estate. In August of that year, 2 of his daughters filed a petition for conservatorship to gain control of their father's missing assets. Their goal was to free up some money so that a reward could be offered for information leading to Robert's whereabouts. As recently as 2019, 2 people were arrested in connection with Robert's disappearance but were released shortly after, due to a lack of evidence and a pending investigation. Initially, the family suspected Robert's barber of being involved, but investigators found no evidence to support this claim. Detectives also found no signs of foul play in the disappearance. A $50,000 reward was offered for any information leading to Robert's whereabouts, or to the arrest or conviction of those responsible for his disappearance. At the time of his disappearance, Robert Harrod was 81 years old. He is described as a Caucasian male, with partially gray hair, a balding top, and blue eyes. He stood 5 feet 11 inches tall and weighed around 160 pounds. If anyone has information regarding this case, they are urged to contact the Brea Police Department at 714-993-8168. Robert Wayne Connor remains one of the most frustrating disappearances in Claremont, North Carolina. The 62-year-old was living alone on an acre of property near US 70 East in Claremont. He was described as a very dependable individual, and according to family and friends, it was completely uncharacteristic of him to just vanish. On the night of July 18, 2013, Robert was seen at the Boxcar Grill restaurant, located on North Oxford Street. He had been spotted at the bar, but no one knew where he had gone afterward. 6 days later, Robert's daughter reported him missing to the Catawba County Sheriff's Office when she was unable to make contact with him. The investigation that followed revealed a deeply unsettling scene at Robert's home, located in the 4100 block of Highway 70. Police found his vehicle and his beloved dog, Rusty. The truck had been parked in an unusual spot, and Rusty appeared hungry and frantic. The unsettling atmosphere worsened when Robert's daughter discovered uncollected mail jutting out of the mailbox, 14 unanswered messages on the answering machine, and his firearm, a .357 Magnum, missing. Everything at the house seemed out of place. According to the Hickory Daily Record, Robert's daughter expressed her belief that her father had met with foul play. She mentioned that if he had been harmed, there was a creek nearby where he could have been hidden. The creek she referred to was Lyle Creek, which was thoroughly searched, along with Connor Park and the surrounding areas. Despite extensive efforts, no clues were found to suggest Robert's whereabouts. 3 years later, in a surprising development, authorities received an unexpected tip. This led them to a pond 3 miles from Robert's house near Bunker Hill School. They searched the pond but found nothing. That same year, detectives interviewed John Franklin Dixon, the last person known to have seen Robert before his disappearance. However, no new leads emerged from the interview, and Robert's case remained cold. Robert's home remained disarranged, his dog left alone, and no clues as to his whereabouts ever arose, making this one of Claremont's most frustrating missing person cases. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, law enforcement officers also believed Robert likely met with foul play. Robert's case was shared on the Missing Person Cases Network's Facebook page and garnered attention on Reddit. Several Reddit users, familiar with the area, pointed out possible locations where Robert could have ended up, including Little Mountain, which was situated near his home. Robert Connor is described as a Caucasian male, standing at 6 feet tall and weighing around 210 pounds at the time he went missing. He had grey, balding hair and a full beard, though his eye color was not specified. Robert's typical attire included a white t-shirt, overalls, and a hat. He was also known to wear a gold chain necklace with a gold nugget, a silver Timex, and a Citizen brand watch. Any information regarding the whereabouts of Robert Wayne Connor should be directed to the Catawba County Sheriff's Office at 828-465-8301. Melissa Montoya is a Native American woman from New Mexico. The 42-year-old was enrolled as a member of the Jicarilla Apache Nation in 2001. At the time of her disappearance, she was living with her boyfriend in a secluded area of Colorado and working at a nearby ranch. According to her family, the two had been involved in a tense relationship, which left Melissa too afraid to leave him. Despite her family offering her a place to stay, she declined, saying she didn't want to be a burden to them. On March 9th of that year, Melissa headed out to the Apache House of Liquor, where a St. Patrick's Day party was being held. The local pub, located at 13605 US Highway 64 in Dulce, had been nicknamed the Zoo. At the party, she met up with her younger cousin, and the two spoke at length for at least an hour. During their conversation, it seemed as though Melissa was preparing to end her relationship with her boyfriend. Later that evening, she caught up with a friend, and the two began talking when they were approached by a man, believed to be Melissa's boyfriend. After a brief argument, Melissa demanded some space. An hour later, the man approached her again, instructing her that it was time to leave. Melissa walked out of the bar, with the man following closely behind. After this, she was never seen or heard from again. As soon as the investigation began, the boyfriend was the first person to be interviewed. During the interrogation, he claimed he wasn't at the bar that night. However, witnesses reported seeing him there. The man stated he knew nothing about Melissa's disappearance. Due to the lack of evidence, he couldn't be tied to any crime. Not long after, he passed away, and his Colorado home was found burned down. Authorities searched through the remnants of the property but found no evidence related to Melissa's disappearance. Within a month of her vanishing, the Jicarilla Apache Nation Police Department began investigating, along with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA. Unfortunately, progress on the case was slow, and it seemed as though Melissa had vanished without a trace. Earlier this year, Dolene Gomez, an attorney and friend of Melissa, received an email regarding remains that had been found in Dulce. These remains had initially been found 4 years prior and tested positive as female. However, with improved technology, it was later determined that they were the remains of a Native American male. This crushing discovery meant that family, friends, and the community still had no answers about Melissa's fate. Dolene Gomez has spent the last 2 decades fighting for answers, but to no avail. Melissa's big smile and sweet nature continue to haunt those who knew her. Family and friends describe her as fierce, strong, and independent. At the time of her disappearance, Melissa had black hair and brown eyes. She was 5 feet 7 inches tall and weighed around 155 pounds. According to the missing person database, Melissa was believed to have been wearing contact lenses and blue and brown boots when she vanished. Any information regarding the whereabouts of Melissa and Montoya should be directed to the Jicarilla Apache Nation Police at 575-759-3222. It was 9:45 a.m. on August 4, 1981, when a woman visiting the shopping center on Manhattan Boulevard glanced through the window of a law office to check the time on the clock that hung on the wall. Beneath the clock sat Cindy Anderson, at her desk, where she worked as a secretary. She was alone at the time, as the lawyers she worked for were all in court that morning. This would be the last time anyone would see Cindy. Her disappearance remains unsolved to this day. Cindy was 20 years old at the time of her disappearance. She was known to be straight-laced, according to those who knew her, and she came from a devout Christian fundamentalist family. She was eagerly anticipating the start of classes at William Tyndale Bible College in Detroit, which she planned to attend at the end of the summer. Cindy was also in a relationship with Jeff Lemley, the man she believed she would marry. On the surface, everything seemed normal in Cindy's life, but there was more going on than anyone realized. Cindy had been receiving disturbing phone calls for months, leading up to her disappearance. The calls would come through at her workplace and appear to terrify her, though no one ever heard who was on the other end of the line. One day, a client came into the office to pay a legal bill, and he witnessed Cindy answer the phone cheerfully, only to quickly slam the receiver back down. A few moments later, the phone rang again, and this time, Cindy answered with visible nervousness. It appeared to be the same caller, and she once again slammed the phone down. The client was so concerned by Cindy's reaction that he contacted the police and asked them to check on her. In addition to the unsettling phone calls, Cindy had also been experiencing strange dreams. In these dreams, a man she knew would force her out of her home, into his car, and take her life. Despite her parents' attempts to reassure her that they were just dreams, Cindy couldn't shake the feeling that they were somehow related to a stalker. These unsettling events culminated in her disappearance on August 4th. Just 15 minutes after she was last seen by a passing shopper, Cindy's mother tried to call her at work. When Cindy didn't pick up, her mother assumed she was on the other line with a client. However, it soon became clear that no one had been able to reach the office. When the lawyers arrived at the office around noon, everything seemed in order. Phone messages had been neatly placed on their desks, the air conditioner had been switched on, and Cindy's car was still parked outside. The only thing amiss was that Cindy herself was missing, along with her car keys and purse. Both police and Cindy's family strongly believe foul play was involved. Who might have taken her, and why, remains the subject of countless theories, including one suggesting that a lawyer at the firm may have been involved, though no evidence supports this claim. How Cindy was taken is also a mystery. None of the phones had been left on hold, which Cindy would typically do if she was stepping out of the office, so it seemed unlikely she had simply gone out for lunch. Yet, there were no signs of a break-in, and Cindy had been keeping the door locked, due to her fear of a stalker. Cindy's friends and family still hold on to hope that answers may come one day, but the case has remained cold for decades. The disappearance of Stephen Clark is one of the strangest missing person cases. Simply put, almost 20 years ago, he walked into a public bathroom and never came out. Stephen was 23 years old in December of 1992. He was physically disabled due to a road traffic accident when he was a child, but despite this, he excelled in school and during his apprenticeships. On December 28, 1992, Stephen's father went to a local football match. Stephen wanted to attend too, but he didn't want to buy his ticket, so he decided to go for a walk instead. Stephen and his parents lived in the UK, near the beach, and that afternoon, he and his mother, Doris, went for a walk along the shore. They reached Saltburn, about 45 minutes away, at around 3 p.m., when Stephen needed to use the bathroom. They visited the public toilets on a pier along the promenade. Stephen went inside, and Doris decided she would also use the restroom while they were there. When Doris came back out of the women's restroom, there was no sign of Stephen. She assumed he was still inside, but after waiting a while, she figured he must have started walking home without her. However, when she arrived home, Stephen was nowhere to be found, and she realized he was missing. Despite extensive searches of the beach around Saltburn, no clues have emerged as to what happened to Stephen. There have been sightings over the years, though it's unclear how many were credible. One woman claimed to have seen Stephen outside his home at the time he was supposed to be in Saltburn, adding weight to the theory that Doris and Stephen's father might not have been telling the whole truth. An anonymous letter was sent to the police years later, accusing Stephen's parents of being involved in his death. In 2020, they were both arrested and thoroughly investigated before being cleared of any involvement. It seems likely that the sighting outside of his home was incorrect. There were people on the beach that day, including 2 men with a young girl, who used the restroom while Doris was waiting for Stephen. They took turns waiting with the girl while the others used the facilities. It's unclear if they were ever reached for questioning, but it seems possible that whatever happened to Stephen occurred while Doris was inside the restroom. It's also possible that these individuals may have crossed paths with him on the beach. This case is so perplexing because there's no evidence, no motive, and no explanation for what happened to Stephen. Given the relatively recent activity, there have been more appeals for information over the last couple of years. Stephen was 23 years old at the time of his disappearance. He walked with a significant limp and had nerve damage to his left arm. He had brown hair, and anyone with information about this case is urged to contact Crime Stoppers at 0800 555 111. Edward and Stephania Andrews were a well-known couple from Arlington Heights, Illinois, a prosperous suburb outside of Chicago. In the 1970s, Arlington Heights was home to many affluent families and successful individuals, including Edward, a bookkeeper and manager at a Chicago manufacturing firm, and his wife Stephania, a credit investigator. Stephania was also actively involved in the Women's Auxiliary Beverage Institute. On the evening of May 15, 1970, the Andrews attended a cocktail party hosted by the Women's Institute at the Sheridan Hotel in Chicago. The couple arrived at the event around 5:30 p.m., in high spirits, ready to enjoy the night. However, party attendees noticed that Edward soon began to act strangely. He complained of hunger and appeared unwell, staggering around. By 9:30 p.m., the couple decided to leave the party early. They headed toward their 1969 Oldsmobile, which had been parked in the hotel's garage. What followed next was puzzling and concerning. According to the hotel valet, Edward appeared disoriented and was stumbling as he made his way to the car. Stephania, sitting in the passenger seat, was seen crying. Despite the valet's concerns, Edward managed to drive the car out of the garage, though he reportedly hit the garage door on his way out. The valet also witnessed Edward making an illegal turn, driving south in the northbound lanes of Michigan Avenue, toward the Michigan Avenue Bridge and Wacker Drive. Despite this erratic behavior, no one immediately called the authorities. The couple's absence wasn't noticed until the following Monday, May 18, 1970, when both Edward and Stephania failed to show up for work. Concerned colleagues reported them missing, and Arlington Heights police launched an investigation. Investigators speculated that Edward may have lost control of the vehicle and accidentally driven into the Chicago River. This theory was supported by skid marks and scrapes found on a bridge along Lower Wacker Drive. Despite thorough searches of the river, no trace of the couple, or their car, was ever found. Over the years, investigators received numerous tips, but none provided substantial leads. In 1994, an informant claimed that Edward and Stephania's bodies had been dumped in a pond near Green Oaks, Lake County, Illinois, by a group of young men. Despite a renewed search effort in the area, no evidence was discovered to support the claim. Now, more than 5 decades later, the disappearance of Edward and Stephania Andrews remains an unsolved mystery. Their sudden vanishing has left the community and their loved ones without closure. Anyone with information that could help solve this case is encouraged to contact the Arlington Heights Police Department at 847-368-5300. Sharon Sherry Anderson was extremely close to her family, especially her 2 young grandsons, whom she adored. When December arrived, her thoughts turned to Christmas. However, for her family and friends, the holiday season now brings a painful reminder of her unsolved disappearance. Sherry was last seen on December 2, 2000. She left her home in Stanwood, Washington, at 9 a.m. that morning. The night before, she had discussed her plans with her daughter. She intended to go to McDonald's for breakfast, pick up some photos she had sent to be developed, visit Walmart, and then stop by the Everett Mall. She promised her husband, John, that she would be back by 4 p.m. as they had plans for dinner. John fell asleep that afternoon and woke at 5:30 p.m. to find Sherry still wasn't home. He called Sherry's friend, thinking she might be there, but the friend hadn't seen or heard from her. After contacting other friends and family, a search began at 9 p.m. that evening. A friend found Sherry's car outside the Everett Mall. There were no Christmas presents inside, suggesting that whatever happened to her occurred before she returned to the car. Sherry's purse and the weapon she carried for protection were found inside the vehicle. To her family, it seemed impossible that Sherry would disappear voluntarily. She was a dependable social worker, and there had been no activity on her bank account since her disappearance. Family and friends took the lead in the investigation, searching pawn shops for the jewelry Sherry was wearing when she vanished. She had a custom-designed wedding ring, a diamond flanked by black onyx set in white gold. However, there was no sign of the ring in any stores. There has been no trace of Sherry since her disappearance. John filed for divorce a year later, stating that he needed to move on, but the rest of the family has continued to search for answers. Sherry was 5 feet 8 inches and 130 pounds when she vanished. She was biracial, of Caucasian and Cherokee Native American descent, and was last seen wearing a green jacket, blue jeans, and white shoes. Anyone with information about Sherry Anderson's disappearance can contact the Everett Police Department at 425-257-8413. When someone with plans for the near future goes missing, it often raises serious concerns, as it suggests they did not disappear willingly. This seems to be the situation in the case of 37-year-old Kathleen Patricia Haley, who has been missing from Newport News, Virginia, since September 1, 2012. Kathleen's family has emphasized to investigators that she was in the habit of keeping regular contact with them, typically on a weekly basis. They also noted that she would never leave without informing someone of her whereabouts. At the time of her disappearance, Kathleen was working as a dancer at a nightclub called Headlights and was living alone in an apartment on the 2800 block of West Avenue. Her boyfriend had moved to Germany just a month before she vanished. On the day Kathleen went missing, she spoke with her sister and they made plans to have dinner together that evening. Kathleen also mentioned that she had some errands to run after dinner. However, Kathleen never showed up at her sister's house as planned. When her family didn't hear from her for 6 days, they reported her missing to the Newport News Police Department. They also noted that Kathleen's dog was missing, which added to their worry. When investigators arrived at Kathleen's apartment, they immediately suspected foul play. The scene inside the apartment raised many red flags. Investigators found what they believed to be biological material in several places, including on the walls, in the kitchen, and in Kathleen's bedroom. There were also traces of biological material on clothing items left in her laundry basket, which were collected as evidence. Equally concerning was the fact that some items were missing from the apartment. However, it didn't appear to be a robbery, as the missing items seemed to suggest that someone had gone to great lengths to dispose of potential evidence. Among the missing items were Kathleen's computer and bed. The mattress and box spring were later discovered near a dumpster outside her apartment building. Additionally, investigators noted that a piece of carpeting had been removed from Kathleen's bedroom. Multiple pairs of rubber gloves and several cleaning products were found in the bathroom, indicating that someone may have attempted to clean up a crime scene. Kathleen's car was eventually located within the apartment complex where she lived. Investigators found it unlocked, and the driver's seat was pushed all the way back. This was particularly suspicious because Kathleen was only 4 feet 11 inches tall, and she would not have been able to drive with the seat in that position, suggesting that someone much larger had driven the car. Shortly after Kathleen's disappearance, investigators released a sketch of a man who was seen by witnesses entering and exiting Kathleen's apartment on September 4th. The same man was also observed carrying what appeared to be rolled-up bedding toward the dumpster. Despite questioning Kathleen's co-workers at the club, none of them had seen her and were unable to provide any useful information regarding her whereabouts or who she might have been with. With no solid leads, investigators turned to Kathleen's bank account and cell phone records, but there has been no activity on either since her disappearance. The same is true for her credit cards. Kathleen's family has stated that she would never have given her car keys or apartment keys to anyone she didn't know, and that it was highly unusual for her to leave her car unlocked, even within the apartment complex. Kathleen is described as having brown hair and hazel eyes. She is approximately 4 feet 11 inches tall and weighs between 100 and 120 pounds. She is known to wear a gemstone necklace and small stud earrings. Kathleen's family is desperate for answers and urges anyone with information to come forward. If you have any information about Kathleen's case, please contact the Newport News Police Department at 757-928-4100. Alternatively, you can provide information anonymously by contacting Crime Line at 888-562-5887.